defend. There we go. So we defend our punches the same way we defend a knife, because in the moment, like you saw in that drill, most times you're not seeing that blade come at you, right? So whatever we throw up against a punch needs to work against a knife. Now, this is the foundation. We're building our partner from the basic 360 positions. There's 7 of them. We're gonna go over them in a moment. This is not how we would advocate dealing with somebody with a knife, wielding and trying to stab you. We don't just stay there in the pocket and work on our defenses, right? The ultimate goal is to hit, attack simultaneously. So with our defense, we're punching and attacking at the same time. That attack is huge because it disrupts the attacker's OODA loop. It takes them off the offense and puts them on defense in that moment. And then we overwhelm them with violence of action and get away. And if we can grab another object to help defend against that attack, we're gonna do so, whether it's a chair, whether it's a briefcase, or whatever we can use, whether it's putting ourselves behind cover, using a vehicle to keep space between me and my attacker, that's what we're gonna do. A lot of times we get compared to striking sports out there, boxing, Muay Thai, where they do a lot of covering, right? Covering to me is an oh shit defense. What that means is all of a sudden something's coming at me, my natural reaction is to ball up and bring my hands up to cover my face. And in that moment, with lack of training, that's the best we can do. That's what our body's natural instinct wants us to do to protect ourselves, all right? It's innate. We're born with that. The problem with that is it may work against punches, it may deflect a few punches, but eventually if all I'm doing is covering, I'm taking punishment against a much heavier, much more skilled opponent. I'm gonna lose that encounter. And if all of a sudden a real edge weapon comes into play, not only may I not see it coming, but I have nothing to defend against that knife. That knife is gonna cut me and cut me and cut me until I'm no longer able to fight back. And if all I do is defend, I'm never gonna turn the tables against my opponent. That simultaneous counterattack with that 360, that's better than covering. The only time covering works is in a controlled environment. When I have boxing gloves, I'm in a ring. The referee, before I enter the ring, check my gloves, check to make sure I'm safe. If a boxer throws a punch or someone with Muay Thai and I can use my gloves to cover or to redirect or absorb, that works great in those fighting sports. But on the street, it does not have a high level of success, especially when it comes to dealing with edged weapons. So in Krav Maga, our defenses need to work for punches as well as weapons themselves. So under stress, when my life is on the line, I see something, boom. With training, of course, I go from just covering without training to boom, doing something that's gonna have a higher level of success in that moment. Don't get me wrong, training on covering is important because there's a time and place to use that covering. If I'm really, really close to my opponent and I'm caught off guard, there's no space for me to extend. So covering makes sense. But if I'm training on covering in a self-defense situation without gloves, I need to be looking for what's in my opponent's hands. What do they have? What is coming my way? Because if all of a sudden I go to cover, I see a knife, I have to extend away, right? I have to send my attacks. I have to keep that weapon away from me and I have to get my attacks on target as soon as possible. You know, if I'm on the ground, I fall to the ground and multiple attackers are stomping me and kicking me, of course I'm gonna have to shell up. Of course I'm gonna have to cover. I need to train from that position of disadvantage, and then where do I go from there? Using my vision, going from covering to extending, and then picking my weaker target or picking my exit, getting to my knees, getting to my feet, and working from there. I always have to work from close quarters and then having space, working that distance continuum. So again, we will do a whole segment on covering and how to use it in the self-defense environment, but I don't want you to get confused with covering as the end-all be-all in the fight, because there's a time and place for it, and it's not if I have the opportunity to make my 360. I'd rather do that 9 times out of 10 than covering, unless I have no other choice. 360 defense, we're building a sphere of defense around our body that stops any punch, any knife attack, any sharp object, anything that's coming from the outside in. I'm stopping it aggressively, 90-degree bend in my elbow. I'm attacking the attack. My defense is actually an attack. She's cutting into my wrist. Optimal defending surface is my wrist as the defender to the attacker's wrist, right? The goal is, whenever possible, to maintain as close to 90 degrees as we possibly can. We know that under stress that sometimes you may extend beyond that, and that's okay, that will happen, but we want to try the best we can to stay 90 because that keeps whatever coming my way from redirecting somewhere else. If Amber's defending, and let's say that arm is extended out because she doesn't want to engage with her body, she may avoid that initial attack, but now that attack is sliding to another part of her body. And if it's a punch, it may not be the end of the world. But if it's an edged weapon, you can see how now all of a sudden you're redirecting that knife into another part of the body. So let's talk about the defense. I start out with my students in a passive position. So Amber's going to be feet just outside shoulder width. You've seen this passive stance many times before. We're going to start with the hands up, right? So we're kind of putting our partner and our students in a win-win situation right now, so we can get the principles of the 360 defense down and make sure she feels comfortable with it. There's 7 positions that we go through. Position number 1 is going to be fingertips to elbow, so she's going to use both hands together at the same time. She's creating, right, that 360 defense. She's tucking her chin. She maximizes the range of motion by extending her shoulder and her elbows, so she completes that 90 degrees. Number 2 position is going to be fingertips together like the roof of a house. Again, shoulders extended, chin tucked. She's ducking underneath her cover. Position number 2. Position number 3 is basically like goalpost, straight up and down. And if you notice, if Amber turns a little bit here, the defenses are in front of her body, not behind her body, in front of her body, right? Facing her attacker. So number 3 position. Number 4 position, the elbows come down, right? This is covering anything coming low to high if our hands were already up. So if my hands are up in the fight, the quickest transition is to go to this number 4 if something's coming low to high. Now, when we go to 5, 6, and 7, that's when we start bending at the waist. The key to this is when we go for 5, I'm bending at the waist, again, to maintain maximum distance from my wrist, my forearm, to whatever is attacking me. And if there's a knife involved, I want to maximize that distance by bending at the waist and getting my weight forward into the defense. So as she goes from number 4 to number 5, she bends at the waist, and she's doing that external rotation with the hands. And then number 6 is basically the opposite of number 2. She bends a little more at the waist because she's going lower, weight's going forward. And then number 7, fingertips to elbows. Again, look at the distance between her defending surface and her body, right? It's roughly maybe 14, 15 inches. So I want to keep that distance while keeping my weight in the attack, in the defense. And then she comes right back to starting position. So from here, we'll do it again. Hands here. I'm going to go through the numbers with her. She'll do 2 hands to begin with. We got 1, fingertips to elbows. Number 2, like the roof of the house. 3, up and down like goalposts. 4, elbows into the ribs. And then 5 is when we transition, rotating out, slight bend at the waist. Number 6, even more at the waist. And then number 7, even more at the waist. And then reset. So we start out 2 hands together, just to breed familiarity with both sides. Now we're going to work 1 hand at a time. So again, starting from that same position, we're going to use only the right side. We're going to go from 1 through 7 using just this 1 hand. The left side is going to maintain cover, staying on that side, ready for action. 1, 2, 3, 4, elbows in. 5, now start bending at the waist. 6, even more at the waist. And 7, even more at the waist. And reset. 1 more time on the right side. Ready? 1, directly overhead. Notice how her weight's going into the defense. Weight's shifting to the balls of her feet, tucking her chin. Number 2. Good. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5, bending at the waist. Number 6. Number 7. Good. And then we can do the same exact thing on the left-hand side. So we go from 2 hands to 1 hand. Right. Now, I want to build her reaction time. I want to give her some tools so she can be give her some tools so she can be successful when she's learning how to defend and then translating to the street. Eyes can either be focused on center mass or looking at my eyes, but making sure she's using her peripheral vision. Meaning, if I attack her on this side, I don't want her eyes to only focus on my right hand, because then if an attack comes here, she won't be able to see that. So I stay focused center. She can see both right hand side right here, both left hand side. That's using her peripheral vision. She starts in a ready position. I'm going to start right side, making my attacks, then left side. Once I feel she's comfortable with that, then I'm going to mix it up. So nice and slow, work that progression. And if you notice, as the attacker, I'm starting very wide. I'm telegraphing my movements for a reason, because I want to build her defenses. And then as she gets better, then I can shorten that distance, make it more of a realistic attack. So 1 position, number 2, number 3, now elbow down, number 4. So I'm starting to come up, right? Make sure that wrist is straight. Good. Now we're going to do that number 5. So 4 and 5 are interchangeable. 4 is for when my hands are more up, then I can make that transition. 5 is when my hands are down. So they both cover that same spot. That's that number 5. Notice how she's starting to bend at the waist, but her weight is going into the defense. Then my number 6, slightly more at the waist, and then number 7. Good. Now we work the other side nice and slow. Number 1 position, number 2, 3, 4. Good. 5, same area, but now hands down. Good. Now 6, and then 7. Boom. Awesome. So that's me building her right side, left side. Now we mix it. Some right, some left, some up, some down. I'm working all 7 positions for the most part. Her goal as the defender is to use her peripheral vision, right? She sees the attack out of the corner of her eye. She goes out to attack the attack with that external rotation, like we talked about in earlier videos. She attacks the attack and then returns back to ready position, so she's ready for the next one. Slow. And notice, again, I'm still very wide with my attacks. And for safety and training, I'm going with the palm towards her, not my ridge hand or my bony side, because I want to definitely not injure myself as her training partner. I'm going to work all the way around that circle, 360 degrees, focusing on covering all the 1 through 7 positions. Good. And then as she starts to get better and better, I start to speed it up, right? And she gets more aggressive and more aggressive. So that is the basic progression from learning 360 and getting my partner moving. Good. So now, I talked about this earlier, the most important part is that simultaneous counterattack. If I don't attack at the same time or as close to it, I'm doing nothing to get my attacker off his path of being the aggressor. I want to put them on defense. So the only way to do so is to make contact, disrupt their OODA loop, water their eyes, get their mind on defense for that moment, because that's going to be the way that I'm going to survive that encounter. So now, Amber is going to throw either a straight punch to my face or a palm strike to my face. And I find the palm strikes easier in the beginning because I don't have to worry about opening and closing my hands. I can just keep them both open. So nice and slow from that starting position. I'm going to slow things down, giving her time to see the attack coming and attack and defend at the same time. Good. Now, the key is that part of her energy goes towards the defense. Her body needs to rotate all her weight behind the defense, and then that opens up the channel for the punch. What I don't want to do is focus on the punch and then I neglect my defense, which happens in the beginning stages. I want to make sure all my weight and energy and angle of attack goes to defend the attack. So this is the strongest structure I can make it. And then it makes it easier for my punch to go right down the center. So make more of an effort to go towards the attack. Good. Just that little adjustment. Now I felt like I was running into a brick wall with my attack. Same thing on the other side. Shift your weight here. Boom, good. Nice. Boom, boom, boom. All right, taking you through the progression. Now the next step would be is bringing the knife into play. And we start out slow, and this is not necessarily teaching her how to do knife defense, but it's teaching her to be very focused on keeping that 90-degree bend and getting her weight wrist to wrist. So nice and slow, I'll work those same angles, right? Over the top, and we can start out just doing the defense and then adding the attack depending on the level of my partner, right? Boom, good. All my weight and energy goes towards the knife, everything. 90 degrees, wrist to wrist. Good. Wrist to wrist. Boom, nice. Good, switching sides. That's it, keep that elbow. So you want to extend that elbow forward. There we go. Nice. That's it, elbow forward, make sure it's 90 degrees. Boom. Good, you hear me talking about 90 degrees and that elbow forward. If I just send the hand, which is more natural, I create an obtuse angle so that knife has a chance to slide to another part of my body. So to complete that defense, I want to make sure my elbow and shoulder go forward to maintain that 90-degree angle so it stops the attack, it doesn't redirect the attack. So a little more focus on the elbow. Good, nice. In that simultaneous counterattack, whether it's a palm strike or a full fist, we want to make sure that both hands go at the same time. Now, the camera is my opponent. The attack is coming to the outside. What I don't want to do is stay here and focus on punching in center line with the camera. I want to stay with my body in the direction of my defense. All my weight's supported by this defense. And then that opens up a channel for my punch down the middle. But I always want to send my energy and my weight towards the attack. That's going to make this the strongest it can be. If I focus more on staying center line, what happens is I focus only on the punch, and then my defense suffers for it. All right, so simultaneous counterattack, disrupting the OODA loop of our attacker, getting them on the defense, allowing us the opportunity to overwhelm them with our attacks and potentially get away.